Hey YouTube, I'm going to do a really short video here because something has come to my attention, just watching comments lately on different social media and some other things. And it's the topic of the First Amendment, which includes the freedom of religion. And what's been disturbing me lately has been an increase in the trend of people to demonize certain religions based off of very real concerns, but in my opinion, it's a bit misguided. And I'll explain why. Also, let me make a disclaimer: I am not a Muslim. I do not agree with it, as I do not agree with most state created religions, because that's what it is. But the reason why I disagree with how this is getting a unfair treatment by a lot of people is because yes, they are the cities are basically breaking the law of the land, which is the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and they're allowing or even suggesting that they're going to allow Sharia law, which I completely disagree with, and that's even debatable whether that's really a part of the core of Islam proper. But anyway, the uh, the thing is this: we cannot pick and choose if we are trying to hold the government accountable to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. We cannot pick and choose what parts of that we want to abide by. And so when you start getting into the realm of religion, it's specifically protected by the First Amendment. The freedom of religion to practice your beliefs as you see fit are protected. However, in the whole body of the U.S. law, which is the organic law, we also have included the natural law, which basically states your rights end where mine began and vice versa. The three things that are the most despicable crimes are murder, rape, and theft. And then the fourth one would be lying. um, Dishonesty in a professional setting. But anyway, as long as somebody does not violate those three basic laws, they're fine. What I see a problem with is that a lot of people are demonizing a whole group based off of the actions of a small faction. And I'm going to explain why I disagree with that. The vast majority of American Muslims, whether they were born that or they converted to it or, as they say, reverted, the vast majority of American Muslims are peaceful people. Many of them came here because of the freedoms that we have. Some of them are a bit misguided, and they think that they need to follow the more radical elements. Actually, not a bit misguided, but they're just way off base because they refuse to recognize the law of the land. And that's no surprise because our government doesn't recognize it either. And the reason why they're allowing these new things coming into play and overriding the law of the land and the city ordinances and stuff is because they want to create animosity. And the reason why people are jumping on a bandwagon from the side of Islam is because they're getting scared of what's happening in our society. And a lot of people, knee-jerk reaction is to run to religion. I'm seeing it every day. People that were never religious, they will run to church thinking that's going to save them. And while it's good to have a personal relationship with your creator, the church ain't going to fix nothing for you. I'm sorry. The churches today are corporate entities, and you really have to dig for yourself down in your heart and get that relationship between you and your maker yourself. Nobody can do it for you. They're not going to wave a magic wand over your head or anything. And oftentimes, people are more misled than properly guided in a church setting. I mean, that's just a fact. But the same thing is happening with the people that are in Islam. They are running to religion, and they think that clamping down, making things more strict and more restrictive, and that's going to save them, and it's not. But anyway, the whole point is this, that you can't pick and choose. You cannot pick and choose what part of the Constitution you want to abide by if you're trying to get the government to abide by all of it. That's just inconsistent morality, inconsistent logic. And you say, well, yeah, but they're doing this and they're doing that. Well, let me explain something. Each country that has a significant Muslim population is different. Each one of them is different culturally. Each one of them is different in their whole outlook and demeanor. And a lot of guys that come back from Afghanistan and Iraq have seen the worst representatives for Islam. If you were able to go into Libya before they started blowing it up, then you would have seen a country where everybody didn't have anything to worry about. They're practically naive. They thought that everything was taken care of for them. And but there was freedom of religion. You had Jews there, you had Christians, and they intermingled and interacted with Muslims just fine. There was rarely any problems. Any crimes that were committed were dealt with as crimes. Not hate crimes, not as religious-related crimes. They didn't differentiate. They just treated them equally as crimes. That's what we have to do as well. Same thing with Syria. Syria, religion was a very private matter. How you prayed to God didn't matter. What did matter was your actions. And you see how they tore that country apart. So there's definitely an agenda. But when you go to Afghanistan and Iraq, and especially in Afghanistan, and this is the point I want to make up. In Afghanistan, those people are criminals. They have a criminal culture. They have a prison mentality. They are rapists and murderers. And this is normal to them. So the whole country is like a prison, in control. It's controlled by the criminals, okay? That's basically what we're looking at. So for someone to say that that's a good representation of Islam is almost the same as saying that all Christians are evil. Anyway, to continue. For someone to say that the Taliban are a good representative of Islam is the same as saying that Al Capone is evil, therefore all Christians are evil because Capone was a Catholic. Or that a gangbanger who prays to God, that he won't get shot down and die when he's slinging dope on the corner, is a good representative of a Baptist. It's just silly logic. So if you hear this kind of rhetoric, be very, very wary, because the government is trying to demonize the Patriot movement. Or any liberty movement or libertarians or anything, or militias. They're trying to do this. And one of the ways they do this is they plant COINTELPRO and agitators in there to stir people up and get them emotionally angry about stuff that has really nothing to do with them. They're never going to get affected by it, but they build up this fear. And what this fear does is it burns out of control, and then you have an incident. People lash out. They attack somebody that never did nothing to them simply because of their religion, which is protected under the First Amendment. We've got to be honest about that. So, anyway, that to me is a problem. It's a huge problem. It needs to be nipped in the bud right now. Yes, our administration is showing favor to people from foreign countries and trying to allow them to introduce their laws here. Why? Because they have an international agenda. They want to make international zones. Therefore, the Constitution doesn't apply. That's their motivation. It's not because they're Muslim. They're doing the same thing when they're selling land to the Chinese. They're doing the same thing when they're doing, giving other countries chunks of land and allowing them to move in where it's a constitution-free zone. So that is their agenda. They want to get rid of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and what better way to do it than to get us patriots and people in the militia and liberty-loving people and libertarians to violate the Bill of Rights ourselves, because then they can point the finger right back at you and say, listen, you want us to follow the Constitution? Well, you're not doing it, so why should we? So we got to keep our noses clean first before we can ever expect a cruddy, corrupt politician to do it, because they're never going to do it. But we have to be straight-laced and consistent, because we can't expect them to even listen to us if we're not. So bottom line is, we have to follow it to the letter. We can't pick and choose. We can't say, oh, well, they're Muslims, so, we can go ahead and ignore the First Amendment this time. No. Until they do something criminal, which is harm somebody's life or interfere with their personal rights by either raping them or beating them or cutting off their hand or whatever. Until they do something like that, then we have no right to interfere. If they are living peaceably, then fine. They haven't broken any law. Once they step over that line, then we can do something to them criminally. And that's the only way we should approach it. That's it. Anyway, that's my thoughts about it. And whether you like it or not, it's the law of the land. So, suck it up.